Mr. Beat presents Presidential Elections in American History. The 54th presidential election in American history took place on November 7th, 2000. In the year 2000. It was the first election I could finally vote in, and boy was it a messed up one. We won't even know who won until over a month later. As Bill Clinton left office, the economy was strong, and he had a fairly high approval rating. Sure, there was the whole impeachment thing due to the whole Monica Lewinsky thing. Oh yeah, and there was Vince Foster's suicide, Whitewater, Travelgate, Filegate, and so forth and so on. But many argue the United States was preparing to enter the 21st century stronger than ever before. Because of this, the Democratic Party went with Clinton's vice president, Al Gore, to be their nominee for president. His only real opponent trying to get the nomination was Bill Bradley, the former senator from New Jersey and former professional basketball player. But Bradley withdrew in March. So it was Gore, with Joe Lieberman, a senator from Connecticut, as his running mate. Lieberman was the first Jewish candidate on a major political party presidential ticket. The Republican Party originally had many candidates trying for the nomination, but most of them didn't stand much of a chance against George W. Bush, the popular governor of Texas and son of George H.W. Bush. Bush's main opponent in the primaries was John McCain, a senator from Arizona and war hero who was tortured as a POW in the Vietnam War. However, after a poor showing on Super Tuesday, you know, the day when there are a bunch of primary elections all at once across the country, McCain dropped out. One guy who stuck around until right before the convention was Alan Keyes, a former diplomat to the Reagan administration. He just kept fighting. And one thing that is absolutely true that I can actually quite admire is that Alan Keyes remains the only presidential candidate in history to ever jump into a mosh pit on the campaign trail. Michael Moore jokingly gave him his endorsement after he featured the historic moment on his show, The Awful Truth. Anyway, yeah. George H.W. Bush won. You know that, don't you? He had all the right friends in the right places, the right last name, and, oh yeah, a lot of people loved him. Bush asked Dick Cheney, who was the Secretary of Defense for Bush's dad, to lead a team to help him find a running mate. But, in the end, Bush just went with Cheney to be his running mate. However, because Cheney also lived in Texas, he had to change his voting registration back to his old home of Wyoming, because otherwise, the electoral votes they would presumably get from Texas would not count. While there were a lot of third-party candidates, I will only mention the Green Party for this election. The Green Party had been around in some form or another since the 1980s and had a platform that focused on environmental causes. They nominated Ralph Nader, the famous activist and lawyer who had sparked reform by getting numerous consumer protection laws passed. The Green Party also nominated Winona LaDuke, an activist, economist, and writer from California, as Nader's running mate. Both Nader and LaDuke had run together back in 1996, but had gotten less than 1% of the vote, which is why I didn't even mention them in that episode. The two frontrunners, Bush and Gore, mostly focused on domestic issues. Bill Clinton's impeachment and the associated scandal with Monica Lewinsky did cast a shadow on Gore's campaign, but he tried to convince Americans he was not Clinton. He rarely appeared with Clinton on the campaign trail, and some say this hurt his campaign. Bush called for more of a humble foreign policy.
So I don't think our troops ought to be used for what's called nation building.
And more unity and less partisanship in Washington. Nader, meanwhile, had super rallies in places like Madison Square Garden. And here are the results. Al Gore won, becoming our... Wait a minute, okay? Please stand by.
PBS News has now, for the second time tonight, pulled back Florida. We are now putting Florida in the undecided category.
Apparently in Florida, it was too close to call. At first, it appeared that Gore had won the state, which meant that he would have won the entire election. However, then some began calling the state for Bush, which meant that Bush would have won the election. Who won? The next day, November 8th, the final votes were finally counted. Bush had a slight lead, but the lead was so small that Florida law required a mandatory recount. After the recount later that week, Bush's lead had shrunk to just 300 votes in the state. Then, after counting overseas military ballots, Bush's lead went back up to 930 votes. Gore wanted more manual recounts, and the Florida Supreme Court extended the deadline to November 26th. By this time, Bush and Gore were fighting each other in court. Out on the streets, people were protesting on both sides. It got pretty heated. Ultimately, the United States Supreme Court stepped in and stopped the recount with a vote of 7-2. They argued that the Florida Supreme Court's plan for recounting ballots, using different vote counting standards from county to county, and poor oversight over the entire process, were unconstitutional. Therefore, the results stood. At the time, the certified count had Bush ahead in Florida by 537 votes. So, George W. Bush became the 43rd president in American history, more than a month after Election Day. He received 271 electoral votes. Al Gore ended up with 266 electoral votes. What was frustrating for Gore voters was that Al Gore actually won the popular vote. He got 48.4% and Bush got 47.9%. Gore received 543,895 more votes than Bush, but still lost the election. This was the fourth of 4 times in American history in which the winner lost the popular vote but won the presidency. Again, great job, Electoral College. Well done. Ralph Nader finished 3rd with no electoral votes but 2.7% of the popular vote. Almost immediately, Al Gore supporters blamed Nader for spoiling the election, but there is absolutely no evidence to support this, as I examine in this video that you can watch right now, if you want to, and such. Dick Cheney became the 46th vice president in American history. It was one of the closest elections in American history, obviously. Since then, many studies have examined the ballots to see if the result would have been different if there was another recount. But there is simply no definitive answer. So that's pretty much why people still argue about the election to this day, especially when you look at the dramatic events that unfolded during Bush's first term in office. Well, believe it or not, I am almost done with this series. I've been doing it for almost 2 years, and I have only 3 episodes left. So the last 3 remaining episodes will be released every Monday from here until Election Day. I mean, there's 3 weeks left until Election Day, less than that. So that means on Monday, October 24th, will be the election of 2004. Monday, October 31st, Halloween, will be the election of 2008, and Monday, November 7th, the day before Election Day, will be the election of 2012. And that same day, I also plan on hosting an AMA on Reddit. Also, another announcement is because I'm not doing this series anymore here in a few weeks, I will probably be taking a little bit of a break, because this has worn me down a little bit trying to meet this deadline of Election Day 2016 to get this series done. But after I recover and the break is over in the new year, 2017, I would like to start a new series, because it's fun doing series like this. I've never quite done it like this before on my channel. So if you have any ideas for another history series that could work in a similar fashion, please suggest those in the comments below. You know, I'm not very strong on politics outside of the United States, so just a warning, I'm not sure if I'm up for the British elections throughout history or even Canadian, but I'm open to many different ideas. A couple ideas I had already was maybe looking at a history of each professional baseball team, because I'm a big baseball fan, as you can see with the Royals cap there, or maybe a history of different countries or different states. I don't know, something like that might be cool. But again, let me know in the comments. And 3 more episodes. The next 3 Mondays I will release those, and the final episode before the real election day, this election day 2016, will be on November 7th. So 3 more, we're counting them down. Thanks for watching and supporting this series. I'll see you for the next presidential election, buddy.